Good morning and welcome to the Saturday morning edition of the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, sponsored by the Draft Professors. Today we are joined by Drew Collins, Anthony Russo. Guys, you have been podcasting. Each of you has been podcasting for a while, right? So Drew on Mondays and Sundays, Anthony on Fridays and Saturdays. I'm really happy to have both of you together here on Saturday morning. Drew, how are things in the New Orleans Saints football landscape?
I mean, Anthony will know Saints face the Jets this week, so what a big matchup. But, I mean, I feel like the Saints are honestly very optimistic right now because although the record may show, they're on a 2-game win streak. Tyler Shuck has the most wins out of a rookie quarterback. He's 3-3. He's looked really good and has given the Saints an option for 2026. So now going into the draft, the Saints are in no need to draft a quarterback. So I feel like right now Saints fans are very optimistic and actually enjoying themselves. It's a good time.
And Anthony, how do you describe Jets world?
We are not enjoying ourselves. It's a time. It looks like by all accounts Aaron Glenn is going to stick around for another year, which it's not really a surprise, but I suppose there was a chance that would happen. But as a guy who was not a Tyler Shuck fan in the past draft cycle, he's sort of playing better than I thought he would. And I honestly, I'd probably rather be the Saints right now, just from a future outlook standpoint. I think both rosters are messy in their own ways, but at least the Saints have a little bit of optimism at the quarterback position, whereas the Jets are just in for God knows what. Saints Jets is going to be an instant classic, no doubt. This Sunday it's going to be a hell of a matchup.
Talked about it for years to come.
Yeah. All the deciding factor between picks 5 and 7 is really going to be talked about for ages.
Well, yeah, and the team that wins is pretty much eliminating themselves, in my opinion, from the Mendoza sweepstakes. So for as much as Drew says they're not drafting a quarterback, the winner of the game is immediately eliminated from the quarterback sweepstakes. It's not to say if you lose, you're getting a quarterback, but if you win, you're definitely not.
I mean, I think it's just the Raiders' position to lose right now. Like, if they somehow, I don't see an option where they really don't get the first overall pick right now. But
now the only way is if they actually beat the Giants and the Giants get the first pick, then I suppose there's the world where the Jets become the top potential trade up team just because they have the most ammo. But if the Raiders get the first pick, I don't see a world it's not Mendoza.
They've got to.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're here to discuss offensive tackles. And I'm sharing the boards on YouTube. I will read them out loud for the users on Spotify. So Drew's tackle board, Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, Francis Maui Noah, Caleb Tiernan, Max, give me a minute.
Ian
Acor. I wanted to make sure I said that.
I would have been wrong. I would have been
wrong. We had to look it up. We looked it up before. Don't worry.
All right, okay.
Max, Ian Acor, Austin Barber, Drew Shelton, Blake Miller, Caden Proctor, Caden Green. Anthony's board, which is on the right, if you're looking at YouTube, is Spencer Fano, Caleb Lomu, Trevor Gooseby, Max, Ian Acor, Nikki Prongos, Isaiah World, Blake Miller, Lance Hurd, Caden Proctor, Jaden Williams, Austin Barber, Drew Shelton. And Drew also offered a disclaimer that he hasn't necessarily watched every offensive tackle yet. So Drew has ranked the players he's watched, but he also knows that he still has some tackles to add. So I guess the first thing is there really any debate that Fano and Lomu are the two best tackle prospects? You guys have them at the top of your board. Same two that Owen and Jerry had at the top of theirs. Anthony, slam dunk that Fano and Lomu are the two best tackle prospects?
I think so. I would say one, if you wanted to flip the order, I wouldn't. I could understand the argument and I wouldn't be mad at you. And I think really the only other debate is if you, as Drew does, consider Maui Noah a tackle, you could potentially have him in that top two, and I wouldn't be shocked by that. I see him as a guard, which is why he's not listed for me. And I'm sure we'll get more into that when we get there. But I do think Fano and Lomu, who have both declared officially at this point, they are, to me, the top two tackle prospects in a rather underwhelming class, I would say.
So, Drew, if a team needed an offensive lineman, like anywhere across the board, right, would you select Maui Noah over Fano and Lomu?
I mean, that's definitely an interesting conversation to get to, because kind of with what I do for my offensive tackles, offensive guards, is I'll put them at both if I think they can play both. So Maui Noah, I think he'll be better at a guard, but I'm not ruling out the possibility that he'll play tackle, because I feel like he would still be a good tackle. His movement skills, we'll get into all that later, but I still think I would go with Fano or Lomu, because I just think, yeah, the class may be underwhelming, but I think both those could be franchise cornerstones. Same thing with Maui Noah, but I think you'd rather get someone who can be a all-pro at tackle potentially, or who can develop into that, rather than someone who you could try at tackle but have to move into guard, which could stunt their growth a little bit.
Got it. So, I mean, we can have the Francis Maui Noah conversation now. He's at the top of Drew's board. And I guess, Anthony, same question to you. If a team needed an offensive lineman, regardless of position, let's say the New York Football Giants, would Maui Noah be graded higher than Lomu or Fano if we need an offensive lineman, we want the best offensive lineman possible?
Yeah, he definitely could. I think for me, Maui Noah is going to wind up top 15 to 20 as a guard prospect. I think he is a very good guard prospect. I think he's potentially even an all-pro at the guard spot. I think for me it just comes down to, I think if you project him purely as a tackle, I have questions about him, sticking at the tackle spot long term. I think as a guard, his ceiling is a lot higher, and so that's why I don't include him. But if a team, like the Giants, who certainly could use some help on the interior, took him, let's say they traded down to a late top 10 pick or like early teens pick, and they decided to take him in that range. I think that's completely justified, even if like a Fano or a Lomu are still on the board, because Maui Noah, I think all three of them do different things well, even though they're all offensive linemen. I think they're three pretty different prospects. So, but Maui Noah is a hell of a football player, and he's had a really solid season.
So, Francis Maui Noah or Peter Skoronski, who is the better prospect for you, Anthony?
It probably, it would have been close. I'm trying to remember what I would have had on Skoronski.
Because Skoronski, feel free, I don't have Google up in front of me, right? But Skoronski was like a top 5 or a top 7 pick, wasn't he?
11th.
No, I was going to say he was outside.
Oh, okay. He was just
10.
outside the top 10, which is where Anthony was suggesting you take a player like Maui Noah.
Yeah, I think it's the same. It's the same exact kind of comparison, and not really in terms of like play style, but in terms of like guys who are tackles that will move inside and have higher projection there, and where you would take them. Yeah, it's that kind of range for sure. But I'd probably say Maui Noah, because I think he just has a little more just raw power and raw ability that he brings as an interior prospect. But it's a fair comparison.
Okay, so different Fano, Lomu, Maui, Noah question, because based upon like the grades that I'm looking at in front of me, right? Drew, do you have Fano and Lomu as first round grades?
Yeah, I do think both of them will be first round tackles. I
And
think,
Maui Noah is also a first round grade.
yeah, but I think he will be a guard. Like that's
Yep.
full clarity. That's where I believe he will play. But I'm not going to rule out the possibility of him playing tackle, so he's on there as well. But I do think he'll be a first round pick as well.
Okay. So the question is, how high can Fano and Lomu go? Like, if a team needs a tackle inside the top five, are those
I mean,
guys top five players?
I think Fano definitely could go there. I mean, you've seen mock drafts of him. I wouldn't be surprised to see a tackle needy team picking Fano pretty high. And I think Lomu could also go up there. He's such a young player with outstanding movement skills that a team could definitely buy in on that and select him that high.
What do you think, Anthony? How high can Fano and Lomu go?
Yeah, I think I think Fano could, and I guess Lomu could in theory too. I don't think it's ideal. I don't think either of them are going to be top 5 players for me in this class. So even if you factor in like need, like a team like Cleveland, for example, who is definitely going to be in the offensive line market and will probably pick in the top 5, they could certainly make that move. But I don't think I don't think they're going to be seen as top 5 talents in the class, just where they wind up on big boards.
Yeah.
It
So,
would be a
and
positional value
Yeah,
thing
I
if
would
they
agree
go
with
that
that.
early.
yeah, and that's kind of where I was going is because I haven't seen them going top five. Like, as I look at other people's mocks, I don't see them going that high in other people's mocks. But other than edge rusher, right? So it would go like quarterback, edge rusher, tackle. Those are the first 3 positions that I think when you're trying to reset a franchise, those are where I would go. Um, I have some logic behind that. So I'm a firm believer in you want to draft players that can play every snap, right? Like you take wide receivers off the field, you don't take your offensive linemen off the field. So the other thing is that if you draft a good tackle and you draft the right one, you don't have to draft that position high for the next 10 years, right? So like Deion Dawkins, for example, second round pick, he's in like year 9 for Buffalo. Buffalo hasn't had to draft an offensive tackle high since they drafted Dawkins, right? So that allows you to address other needs on the roster. So that's why I think you would draft an offensive lineman high. So I guess my question to you, Anthony, would be how early would you take Fano and Lomu?
If I'm a team that needs a tackle, and obviously like Fano plays right tackle, Lomu plays left tackle. So if you factored in that you need one of them at one of those spots, I would say I would feel comfortable at like 7-8 is where I'd start considering them. I don't if I was pick 4, which Cleveland is right now, and needed a both tackle spots, frankly, I still probably wouldn't pull the trigger on them. I just think top 5 pick needs to be like the best of the best, and I'm still not sold that they would be that level.
Drew, how about you? How high do you think Fano and Lomu can go?
I mean, kind of like Anthony said, it's just all on who's there. I could see the Browns getting desperate for a tackle or something like that. I mean, I think they'll go a quarterback. But if they, for some reason, do something Cleveland would do and sign a quarterback in free agency and want to protect him, I could see a team going into the top 5. Now, I don't think they're top 5. Like, I don't know if I would personally have them on my big board, but I do think around that 8 to 10 range would be a great spot for them. But I have a question for Anthony, actually. So last year, I mean, you're a Jets fan, Armand Membu, Kelvin Banks. I believe they went 8 and 9. How would you compare Fano and Lomu to those two?
I think Banks in particular was more of just your prototypical left tackle, like finished product. And I'll say too, like I had Banks 20 something, like low 20s on my board last year. I don't remember the exact number, but I do think he was more of a finished product and would probably be in the teens sort of range in this class. But I think Lomu's whole thing is he has just a high we don't know how high the ceiling is with him because of how advanced and developed he is for a player who's only a redshirt sophomore. His technique is so outstanding for somebody who is so young and still has a lot to learn. And also a player who kind of just needs to fill out physically. I think that's kind of the big knock on him right now is he just lacks natural strength and good kind of mass that he needs to play an NFL left tackle. But from a technical standpoint and athletic standpoint, I think he's got it. So that's but I think Lomu, again, you're betting on the ceiling, which I would probably say is higher than Kelvin Banks' ceiling at this point, and it's probably why, if they were in the same class, I probably would have Lomu slightly ahead of Kelvin Banks. And then the Fano-Membu comparison, since they're both right tackles, I think Fano is better in the run game. I think he's more natural in the run game, in particular when it comes to getting out in space and blocking out wide and in zone concepts. Membu, I think, was a better pass protector, and again, also just had more natural physical talents and strength and power than Fano does. Fano's big question too. He does technically have under 33-inch arms, is what I've read, which I'm usually a stickler about, but I think Fano is athletic enough that it's okay. If we're talking about where Fano and Membo would be on a big board, it's probably like they're going to wind up with pretty similar grades. Like they would be both in that 8 to 12 sort of range on my board, probably. I think they're very similar grade-wise, but obviously just kind of different styles of play that they bring.
Yeah, Drew, I thought that was actually a really good question. Usually I'm the one that's pulling like, this player was drafted there last year. How do they compare? But I love that question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I want to get to Max Ioane. So he's 4th on Anthony's board. He's 5th on Drew's board. And one of the players ahead of him on Anthony's board is probably going to return to school. So just interesting story, right? Because not everybody sees Ioane the same way. So when Owen and Jerry covered him, it was he's a ball of clay. I'll use a day 3 pick on him. And then I took him as the first tackle off the board in a draft team exercise. And Owen's like, what did I miss? And I said, yeah, Anthony really likes him. Right. So based on Anthony, based upon you podcasting, I was able to grab Ioane. So Anthony, tell everybody about Max Ioane, the tackle from Arizona State, and why you are projecting him right now as a round 1-2 grade, which means that if he is top 32, that's not going to surprise you.
Yeah. So look, I think I am going to be higher on him than most people are at this stage. When we talk about players that have accepted Senior Bowl invites and have a chance to really boost their stock when the Senior Bowl comes around, I think Ioane, I'm going to learn how to say that correctly. Yes. I think he has a chance to be one of the biggest risers. For starters, checks the box. It checks every box physically. 6'5", 324, over 34-inch arms. He is, everything you want from a measurables standpoint at the tackle position. He's the right tackle currently at Arizona State, so he sort of has to deal with Sam Levitt's, we'll say, erratic style of play in the pocket. So I think that's a little tick in the positives column for him as well. That he's still able to play well despite some disadvantages thrown his way from the quarterback play. But I don't really disagree with Owen and Jerry's assessment that like he is a ball of play. He is a ball of play. This is somebody who didn't start playing football until junior college, I believe, 2 years ago. So very limited experience wise compared to other tackles that you talk about entering the draft. But what I think he's put on tape for his limited experience, I think is really solid. Hell of an athlete for his size. Really quick out of his stance. Solid movement skills, good feet. Again, has that length that even at times where I think his hands can, his hand placement can be an issue, and his technique can be an issue. He can make up for it because of that natural athleticism and that natural length that he has. This is someone who, I think my grade is definitely a little on the projection side, but we also see a lot of times where these tackles who, they're not finished products and, they have their issues, but again, just check every box from a physicality standpoint and a, athletic standpoint. They go high. The teams, NFL teams, and in particular offensive line coaches covet players like Ioane. So I think that's why, for me, like he should be in that, first to second round conversation. That's what that light green, for those of you watching, that light green font is sort of a like fringe round one grade. So, it's kind of like in the top, probably like a top 40 player is sort of what we're talking about here. But I think he brings a lot to the table, and really isn't even scratching the surface of the best football that he could be playing. So that's why I have him very high on my board.
So, Anthony, one other question. Max Ioane or Amarius Mims, who did you have graded higher?
I think Mims would have been higher because I think he was just so physically. He was as great physically as Ioane is. Mims was on another level in terms of the size, athletic profile that he brought to the table. And I mean, you see now he's actually like one of the saving graces of the Bengals offensive line at this point.
Right, and my understanding was when Mims came out is that he was a raw ball of clay with a limited sample size of starts.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, he needed time to grow and mature in terms of his skill set and his technique. But he checked every physical box, and he did so in flying colors. I don't think Ioane is like quite that kind of freak, but again, still a hell of an athlete and checks the physical boxes. And again, if he puts together like a good Senior Bowl week, he's going to be facing some good edge competition in Mobile. So if he plays well in a thin tackle class, I definitely think first round is on the table.
So, Drew, do you see first round on the table for your fifth ranked tackle, Max Ioane?
I 100% do. I mean, as Anthony just said, the Senior Bowl, if he goes out there and shines, you're going to see his name start rising up draft boards. But kind of the point where I felt comfortable putting him this high on my board is, again, even Utah had this too. Utah and Arizona State both faced Texas Tech. And I think Ioane performed better against David Bailey and Romello Height than either Fano or Lomu did. Fanu and Lomu both. I mean, obviously it's not perfect for Ian Acor. When you have two edge rushers of that caliber, they're going to win snaps. But I feel like Ian Acor held up a lot better than especially Lomu did. Like, so that helped me feel really comfortable. But he's a former judo player, as Anthony said. But his high school didn't even have a football team. He was born and raised in Nigeria until he was 13 years old before moving to LA. And he's got a soccer and basketball background, which I think is pretty evident in his footwork. Especially, I think he's a fluid mover, great frame. I think he's going to be a big riser in the pre-draft process. Not a lot of people knew him. When I first went to scout him, I honestly wasn't sure who I was watching, but I really liked him, and I think a lot of people are going to fall in love with him come draft time.
Okay, and then Drew, you have Caleb Tiernan higher than Ian Acor. What do you like about Tiernan that you have him at 4? And then Anthony will come to you for your rebuttal in a minute.
So, I mean, the first thing about Tiernan is some people don't have him as guard because his arm length is verging on the shorter side. I have around 32.5 inches. So some people project him to guard. He's, again, one of the prospects I think could be a guard, but I'm going to keep him at tackle for now. First off, he's got a great frame. 6'7", 325 pounds. He's filled out, looks good. Then he was a two-sport player in high school, 4-time varsity basketball. And you can really see the athleticism transfer over to his play. He's got great awareness, moves on and blocks well, really good lateral agility. I was impressed by that. Can anchor down against a bull rush, excellent hand placement with strong hands as well. He's got good footwork, gets out of his stance well. I just think he moves well. He's amazing as a screener in the screen game. He can full out run. I posted a clip on my Twitter of him fully running out and taking out an Oregon player to score a touchdown for Northwestern, I believe. But his leverage is kind of high. As I said, the arm length, and I don't think he's the strongest player ever. So some of those may limit his ceiling and may cause him to be a guard at the next level. But overall, I'm a really big fan of Tiernan. I like what I see a lot, and I think he could be a high-quality player at the NFL no matter what position he plays.
Okay, and Anthony, Tiernan is conspicuously missing from your top 12. Is that because you project him to guard like Maui Noah, or for a different reason?
No, that's the reason. And like I wanted to make it known, I watched Tiernan over the summer, and he was a summer scout darling for me. Very much a my guy. I was such a fan of his tape in the summer. And I still think I think he's had a good season. I think he put out good tape this year as well. I just hate I hate the 6'7", 329 part is great, but then like 32.5-inch arms is so problematic because of the way that he's built. It's very T-Rex like.
It's a wonky build. It's
so
weird.
wonky. He's so big. I agree with you. I love the size and the mobility that he carries with that size is great. And that's what I fell in love with watching him over the summer. And I think he was he's definitely a top 50 player on my board. He might have even been like top 30 or like 20, 30 range over the summer. But I just can't. This is what I was like with Will Campbell last year. I was that guy that said, I'm worried about Will Campbell sticking at left tackle because of the arm length. And obviously he's had a overall good season so far for the Patriots. So maybe I will learn to stop being such a stickler for the arm length. But I do especially think, given the frame that Tiernan has, the arm length is a question mark, because he's so tall at 6'7", he already is at a disadvantage when it comes to bend, when it comes to flexibility, to be able to deal with those speedy edge rushers that he's going to face in the NFL. And when you add the shorter arms, now you're basically like doubling that disadvantage. So not only now is it more difficult for you to bend down and get to them, but you now have to reach even further to try to get a hand on them. So like that's what I think that's what the issue boils down to for me. Do I think maybe he could overcome it because of the solid athleticism that he brings. Um, sure, I'm not going to say it's impossible. I'm just worried about it enough to where I don't have him graded as a tackle at this point. The other problem is I don't think he fits really as a guard either. So he's kind of like, trying to fit a square into a circle hole wherever you put him. So that's my issue with him. But he is a really solid football player, smart football player, and somebody I want to succeed. I have too many concerns.
Anthony, do you have a top 50 grade on Tiernan?
I think it's like if he's top 50, it's 50. Like he's like fringe top
Got
50. I could probably just check where he is quick on my board, but
yep. And then Drew, I know from doing mock drafts with you for the Saints that if he's there at the Saints second round pick, you're jumping at that. That was like one of the 4 or 5 guys that you would really love for that second Saints pick.
He's in very strong consideration, and if the Saints do pick him, I'm 100% moving him into the interior. Saints have their 2 tackles, but I think he could be a really good guard, and yeah, if he's there for the Saints, I really like that fit.
Okay, so Drew, the next player that I'm looking at is Austin Barber. So it's interesting to see. So you have Austin Barber at 6. Anthony has him at 11. He was one of the fastest scouting reports for Jerry and Owen. I think the only one that was faster was Maui Noah because they just agreed on everything with Maui Noah. So Jerry and Owen, when they did Austin Barber, they said first round grade. They almost said it simultaneously. And they were really high on Austin Barber as a left tackle. And I said, they're leading that parade. I think you're in the parade with them if you have Barber at 6. So is that a first round grade for you on Barber at 6, or how high is that on your overall board right now?
Right now, I have him as a second round grade. I'm happy that I'm with him, having him high, but I think it's a second round grade right now. I podcasted on Barber earlier. It was a couple weeks ago we did, and I wasn't as high on him then, but I watched another one of his games to get ready for this. And overall, I was really impressed, and he's risen up my boards a little bit. I think he's got good frame. He's got great footwork, quick feet, smooth mover. I think his movement skills overall are pretty good for the size. And he has flashes of great anchoring. He's got good hit timing and accuracy. His hands are strong, good arm length. Legs keep churning in the run game. He'll push a defender back multiple yards. And it's really difficult to win the edge around Barber. He gets out of his stance really well, and he can kind of shut that down for a lot of opposing rushers. I do think his arms can get displaced pretty easily by defenders, and I don't think his play strength is anything to write home about, which is why I have him a little bit lower. Play with a little bit high leverage. But I do really like Barber, a lot higher on him than I was, and I do think he could be a really good tackle for a team. And I have him as a day 2 pick, as I said earlier, like probably second round. But if he goes, I think he's another Senior Bowl player. I could be wrong about that, but I think I remember seeing him at the Senior Bowl. He's another one where if he has a really good Senior Bowl against the David Baileys, against those star edge rushers, I could see a team needing a tackle in this kind of weak tackle class, or not weak, but limited tackle class, and a team selecting him in the back end of the first round.
Okay. So, Anthony, it looks like from the color code, you have a day 2 grade on Austin Barber. What is it about Barber that you don't have him in approaching your top 50?
Yeah, well, so actually it's an early day 3 grade. But for me, it's hard. It's hard when you're evaluating offensive tackles because, they can look good for, 8, 9, 10 games of the season. But then if they have like 1 or 2 games that are just so terrible, it's really hard to get those games out of your mind when you're coming up with your final evaluations. And you try to balance it. I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I have Fano and Lomu as the top 2, even though they both struggled against Texas Tech. But when you watch Barber against Cassius Howell at Texas A&M, who is, by all accounts, a top 50 kind of player, at least. And then you watch him against Ruben Bain at Miami, who by all accounts is at least first round edge rusher.
He's somewhere.
If not even, that's another conversation for another day. But when you watch him against two guys who are top edge rushers in this class, and he struggles mightily against both of them, and they are different players. If it was if it was just he has a problem with the smaller bendy edge guys, then that's one thing. Or if it was he struggles with the guys who just have the raw power advantage, then that's another thing. But the fact that he struggled against both Bain and Howell because they are just so far ahead of him in terms of their hand usage and their technique. I also think I agree with Drew. Like, I think he lacks, Barber just lacks play strength, natural play strength in his hands that he just can't. He struggles to just get his hands on guys and hold up on his blocks. Austin Barber has been penalized 29 times in his collegiate career, including 7 this season, which I think again is indicative of just like he struggles to get his hands on guys, and then when he doesn't, he opts to grab and to try to hold them. Because he loses the rep. So for me, I love the athletic profile. I like the natural first step explosiveness that he has off the line of scrimmage. I think is great. He certainly looks the part of an NFL left tackle. I just was underwhelmed watching him this year when he really had a chance to. Again, in a thin offensive tackle class that was desperate for someone to sort of emerge and be the rising star, we didn't really get that. So I was underwhelmed with Barber. I think he's a early day 3 kind of developmental, guy that could be either a depth piece on the offensive line, maybe can develop into a starter down the road.
Okay, and then Anthony is your number 7, Blake Miller from Clemson. I'm trying to remember the color codes, but I think that's like a round 2-3 grade on Miller, or even a round 3 grade.
Yeah, so all the dark blues are the 2 to 3, like
got it.
Mid to late day 2 guys. So Miller is very much like that. I if you wanted to get specific, it's probably like a round 3 grade. But if he cracked the second round, towards the end, I think that is reasonable. Blake Miller is somebody who I was not a fan of in summer scouting. I was very low on him. I think lower than most people were, but I do think there were a couple people that kind of saw him the same way as I did. Super athlete. What are the measurables? I just had it. 6'6", 315. Again, just a hell of an athlete at the tackle spot. Long arms, 35 inches verified, which you love to see. He really struggled when I watched him over the summer. The big issue I had with him was his anchor sucked. It was bad. He really struggled with speed to power and being able to handle the raw physicality that bigger edge rushers could bring against him. I think it's not perfect, but he's definitely improved his anchor this season. I do think he just still lacks natural power and physicality. I would say in his lower half, especially as well. I also think he just overextends a little too much still. But he is somebody that I feel better about now than I did, 4 or 5 months ago. And I know he's starting to get a little bit of a fan club. Like I think James Foster has him as like a potential round 1 tackle. I'm obviously not there yet. But I don't think he's gotten an all-star invite yet. I could be mistaken. But I feel like he will, or at least deserves to, if he hasn't. And again, somebody that I think could perform well and be a riser on my board if he's able to hang with the tougher competition. But yeah, he's had a good season. Still some questions about him though. But I like him as a day 2 tackle option, particularly in a zone scheme. I think he could flourish.
Okay, and Drew, how high is Blake Miller, who's the 8th tackle on your board? How high is he on your big board?
I'd say I'm a little bit lower than him. I'm late day 2, early day 3 on him, I'd say. Anthony said his athleticism, everything, moving skills were great. There's the mix of the anchor with me, and then I think his placement is kind of inconsistent. You'll see him too often try to go too wide and more or less grab them, which I think if Cade Klubnik scrambled more to the outside, he'd get called in a good amount of holdings. And then I think his footwork's just a little bit choppy right now. There are some reps where it just does not look fluid. So, but I really like the player. A lot of what Anthony said, I 100% agree with. Good motor, good flexibility, great mover. And I do think I watched him a little bit over the summer as well, and I do think he's improved a lot since then. But I'm a little bit lower on him, but I still think he's going to be a great player.
Okay. And then you have, Anthony, you have Isaiah World 1 spot ahead of Blake Miller. We haven't talked about him yet. Where you have him is about where some other podcasters had him too. But what do you like about Isaiah World that you have a day 2 grade on him?
Yeah, so I think Isaiah World might have been like, one of, if not the sort of summer scout, guy that everybody was talking about at the tackle spot. Maybe other than like Mawanoa and the Utah guys. But when he transferred from Nevada to Oregon this year. And there was a lot of hype and a lot of expectation that if he played the way he did at Nevada, at Oregon, he would be a first-round tackle pretty easy. In terms of, again, another guy that checks the boxes from a measurable standpoint, 6'8", 309, has the arm length, has just like top-end size and strength at the left tackle spot. I think he just didn't quite show in the areas that I think he needed to work on and needed to adjust for the elevated competition. Obviously the teams you face at Nevada are very different than the teams you face at Oregon. And obviously he also still has a playoff that could, we could maybe see some more growth that could rise him up a bit, but I don't think he always finishes as a run blocker. He can get in trouble when he gets out in space, I think. I still think his anchor is a bit inconsistent for somebody that is so strong. I think there are times where he just loses the leverage battle, in part because he is 6'8". That's an issue for him as well. But this is somebody who, again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but a lot of these guys have first round tools. I think like Ian Acor and World and Miller, and other guys, like we're going to talk about like Proctor and Lance Hurd. Like they have first round tools. They're just not quite putting it all together for one reason or another. If you told me Isaiah World is a first round pick when we get to April, after a solid playoff and a solid all-star process, I won't be shocked by that. Just right now, I just don't think he's quite as much a finished product as you would want, and didn't quite deliver as much as you would have hoped this season at Oregon. But I think there's a lot to like about him, and that's why like day 2 kind of feels like the ideal range for him.
So there are some Eagles fans who podcast with Draft Professor and use the simulator, that right now they're stamping Isaiah World round 1 to Philadelphia.
I don't hate that.
I
And
see that
again, like
100%.
it would be a reach for me just based on my board, but no, you put him with oh my god, his name's escaping me now.
He would be backing up Lane Johnson and
Lane
replacing him
Johnson,
in year.
Mayada.
Yeah, the coach that everybody loves.
Oh,
The offensive line coach. Oh my god, why can't I think of his name?
that's okay. I put you on the spot on a podcast, and
No,
I can understand you get your Jet Green.
I literally
Jeff Stoutland.
Stoutland. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know why I wasn't thinking of it. Yeah, yes. I 100%, like, if you put him with Jeff Stoutland, and Lane Johnson and Mylotta, like you said too, yeah, he would be a fantastic fit with Philadelphia. So I could totally see that. Again, I don't think he's quite a first round talent yet. Hell, if they got him in the second round, good luck.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I like that fit though.
Okay. And then I'm looking at the list. So I guess the only other two guys that are probably on everybody's list would be Caden Proctor and Drew Shelton. So, Drew, what do you like about Caden Proctor?
I mean, there's a lot to like about Caden Proctor, and there's some stuff that people don't like, which I'll talk about a lot. He's a very kind of talked about name because some people just hate him as a prospect, especially at tackle, which I get a little bit, but we'll go into it later. He's a spectacular athlete. That's the biggest thing. He's number 2 on Bruce Feldman's freak list. He is 6'7", 366 pounds. I think I read he's got like 275 pounds of lean muscle. Just insane athlete and immense power. He can push people back in the run game, and he's insanely strong. But the lack of foot speed at the edge, and he's very susceptible around the edge. I mean, you saw last night, Alabama ended up winning, and I think he performed a lot better in the second half. But our Mason Thomas, who still had a pretty good game against them, he showed some strong flashes. And that's kind of the edge rusher that Proctor will struggle with. That smaller one can bend the edge, good quickness, and that's kind of been his kryptonite all year. Statistically, he's had a pretty good season. I don't think he's given up a sack, according to PFF, since week 1 against Florida State. But there's just some big questions that he needs to answer about his foot speed. Some people project him moving to guard, but 6'7", 366 pounds, kind of like Tiernan, just not the guard frame. I mean, you've seen it work for like Mekhi Becton and stuff like that, but we'll see. He's just a lot of question marks, but there is a lot to like about Proctor.
Okay. And Drew, is he in your top 100?
Yeah, I think Proctor would be my top 100.
Okay.
I, for one, think that his strength, whether he plays on the inside or outside, chip the edge rusher, I think Proctor could be a top 100 pick. I think he will.
And Anthony, it looks like Proctor is inside your top 100 as well. What do you like about Proctor?
Yeah, he is. He's definitely closer to 100 than 50, I'll say. But he is in the top 100. I give Caden Proctor a lot of credit because I think after the Florida State game, we were all ready to like write him off and say that he is like not, he's not an NFL player and he sucks and he's not ready, and he's going to struggle. And ever since the Florida State game, he has played better against, high level SEC competition. That said, there's still just the same issues. He just lacks foot quickness. He lacks just not even natural, just lacks speed. He's slow. He can get beat on his inside, pretty badly, on inside counter moves. I think, we love I love him as a flex tight end, wide receiver, running back, whatever. Those are all fun, and I'm very much here for it. Putting Caden Proctor in a goal line package is great. I just think there are just a lot of issues that he runs into, again, as Drew mentioned, with those speedy rushers. He's 6'7", he was 366. I think he was trying to cut his weight down, but it doesn't really seem like he did. If he, I really just think if he shed about 25, 30 pounds ish and got into like that 330, 340 territory, I think that alone would help him, and he would get some natural agility added to his game, which he just so desperately needs. If you put him in a phone booth with, pretty much anybody, and let him just go downhill and overpower guys, he's great. I've struggled to find a tackle that is better than him in that regard. He can absolutely dominate when it comes to just size and strength. It's really just, if you put him in true pass sets and expect him to, be able to block on a 5 or 7 step drop at 366 pounds, when you have a guy that's 100 pounds lighter trying to sprint past him, he just doesn't have the technique and the agility to do it. So that for me is the issue. Again, he is still in my top 100 because, he has those flashes of brilliance where he just looks like the most dominant blocker on the table. And I also just think, like, if you can get him to improve his conditioning and just get a little more athletic, he could be fantastic for you. But I just think there's more development and projection with him than I think, when we were putting Caden Proctor in round 1 in mock drafts, and myself included. I was doing that over the summer. But I think now it's these issues aren't going away when we thought they could. And, I think that's why I can't say he's any higher than like a mid to late day 2 kind of player for me.
So, Drew, do you think Caden Proctor is scheme specific? Like he's only going to go to a power running team versus a zone running team? Or do you think he could play in most schemes?
Right now, at this moment, I think he's more scheme specific. But if, as Anthony said, he does shed weight, does get a little bit faster, I think that open up countless more possibilities for him. But right now, I think he's got to go to more of that downhill running scheme.
Okay. And then I think the only player that we haven't discussed that's on both boards is Drew Shelton from Penn State. And Drew, I think you're higher on Shelton than Anthony. I don't know that you're higher by a lot, but where is Shelton on your big board, and what do you think of the Penn State tackle?
I mean, Shelton and Miller are pretty close for me. Like they're pretty interchangeable. I originally had Miller higher, then at the last moment I put Shelton there. So those two are in very similar spots. But Shelton, I mean, he's just a really good lateral mover. Great mobility, fluid, smooth. I feel like he can be left on an island in pass protection. I think he can mirror the defender very well. I think he's got active hands. He can. I just really like a lot what I see in pass protection. But in the run game, I have questions about his play strength. I don't think he's the strongest guy ever. His hands are active, but the placement and the power isn't anything to write home about. And I do think this is kind of what we could talk about with Clemson as well. But he had a slight drop off, I feel like, in consistency this year with Penn State than he did last year. I feel like his 2024 tape is very comparable, if not a little bit better than this year's been. So he's probably originally a little bit higher on me in the summer scouting when I watched him than he is now. But I still really like the player, and I think he's got all the tools to develop into a franchise left tackle or a franchise tackle.
So you backed off of left. So do you think Shelton's more of a right tackle?
Well, I just had a brain thing. I just couldn't remember what position he played. Like he's let me just look it up quick. It's been a little bit since I watched him. I don't know why I couldn't remember.
So Anthony,
yeah.
Drew Shelton, right or left tackle for you?
He's the left tackle.
Yep. Okay.
He's been on the left
just
side.
questioning myself. Yeah.
Yeah. He's taken snaps on the right side. So like I suppose in theory he could be both. but he was left tackle for this year for them. I'll just say I actually think Drew and I have pretty similar scouting reports. As you can see, I have him in that mid or early to mid day 3 kind of range. I told this to Jim before we came on. These are the offensive tackles that are currently in my top 150. So you'll notice that Shelton is last, which means he is the last offensive tackle that I suspect will be in my top 50 of the guys that I've watched and graded so far. I'll say, like, for the record too, Shelton was 18 on my summer scouting board overall in summer scouting in August. So I was very high on him. I thought he had a chance to really be like in that tackle 1 conversation, and it just did not work out for him. I mean, literally the first game against Nevada, he didn't even play well, and then just never quite, really had a moment where I was like, oh, this is the player I wanted him to be. I think he does have very good, good athlete with good feet. I think he's a smart player. He has a naturally wide base, which is good as a pass protector. I think he also has a very good snatch and trap technique, which the NFL loves to call holdings on for some reason these days, but is like how you're actually supposed to play the position. I think the issues are just the physicality. I think he lacks play strength. I think he struggles when he's asked to go downhill and sort of be that lead blocker. That's not really his game. I also think his feet can get a little bit choppy and sloppy at times when he's, as a blocker. I think he, people have said he could maybe kick inside. I'm not there. I think like you still would hope he could be a tackle. But he, again, just sort of in the Austin Barber camp where did not live up to the expectations that I think we had, or at least I had in the summer. And, those athletic tools are still there, but in terms of, what they were on the field this year were underwhelming, and I don't see them being the high level kind of impact starters that I originally thought they would be over the summer.
Okay, so I'm just reviewing the list. I think we've covered every player that are on both lists. So there are some underclassmen that made both boards. So Caden Green, Trevor Gooseby, Nicky Prongos, Lance Hurd, and then I'm assuming Jaden Williams is also an underclassman. This is the first I've seen his name on a board. So, Anthony, why don't we start with the underclassmen on your board? Gooseby, Prongos, Hurd, and I assume Jaden Williams as well. Do you think they're in this draft class? Do you think those guys go back?
So I'll say first, Jaden Williams is a senior, and I think everybody is missing the boat on him. But we'll get into that. I do think Prongos, Gooseby, Prongos, and probably Hurd all stay another year. I think the only issue with Hurd, and I'm not a Tennessee guy, so I can't say for sure what's going to happen. But my understanding is Tennessee wants to take their David Sanders, who played right tackle this year, was a 5-star freshman right tackle for them this year, and they want to put him at left tackle sooner rather than later. So that might force Lance Hurd to go to the NFL just because there won't be a place necessarily for him at Tennessee. I can't say, exactly how that's going to shake out. But for the purposes of this, where I only have guys off my board that are officially not declaring, I'm leaving Hurd here. I'll run through each quick. Gooseby, has been the blindside protector for Arch Manning. Just everything you want, like size, athleticism, speed at the tackle spot. Like, it is all there for Gooseby. He is the prototype, the arm length as well. He has over 34-inch arms. He's just been so good, for the past 2 seasons. Last 2024, he came in, had to fill in for both Kelvin Banks and Williams, who were missing time with injuries in different weeks of the season. And so he was forced to play left and right tackle sort of in a pinch, and played well. Better, definitely more naturally at left tackle, I would say, but did well as a fill-in. This year took the left tackle spot over, and it wasn't perfect. Had some issues. I still think his anchor needs a little more work. But definitely, again, like, looks the part of a left tackle. I think he ought to stay back. It seems like, too, they kind of want to align him with Arch in terms of when Arch declares. So I would suspect that Gooseby comes back and then sort of like cements himself as like the first round prospect that I think he can be. Prongos is very interesting. Kind of popped up on my radar towards like the middle to back half of the season. He plays at Stanford. He's the left tackle there. I think if you watch his tape and saw a second round grade, which is what I have for him, you may initially be a little like confused because the tape isn't awesome. It definitely has its issues, but I think you sort of have to, I think you sort of have to put the Stanford offense in perspective that it's garbage and that's not Nicky Prongos' fault. 2, understand that like he is also not the most experienced football player. He is somebody who just took over the left tackle spot for Stanford, but has really flashed that athletic upside, that ability to get out in space and redirect defenders. He does a lot of good things for a relatively inexperienced player. Again, he's only a junior. I could very much see him staying in school and again, like, boosting his stock to potentially be a first rounder next year. But if he did declare and he did get to a Senior Bowl or Shrine Bowl or whatever, I think he could, be another big time riser on boards. But right now, I kind of see him as like a top 50 guy. And then Lance Hurd. Lance Hurd started his career at LSU. He was a 5-star, really highly touted prospect. Got to Tennessee last season. Really did not play well in 2024. Was really rough at the tackle spot. This season, tremendously improved. I would say in particular, he is naturally huge. He's 6'6", 330 and has 36-inch arms, I've read, which is, freak of nature kind of measurables for arm length. He got a lot better in terms of being able to get off the line of scrimmage and finish blocks in space and on traps and pulls and things like that. I think that was an area he struggled anytime he was on the move in 2024. This year, noticeable improvement. I think part of that is he lost like 25 pounds in the off season. And it showed. And again, that's kind of why I brought it up with Proctor too. Like, we've seen it work for Lance Hurd. I think people still worry about his foot speed and foot quickness and his athleticism and his agility and being able to win as a true pass blocker. Tennessee's offense also lends itself to a lot of quick throws, a lot of behind the line of scrimmage stuff where he's not often tested. But I just think the measurables are just too tempting, and the improvement that I saw from 2024 to 2025 is too good that I would not pass on him outside the top 100. And if he does declare, could be definitely on NFL teams' radars because of just the physical gifts that he has.
Okay. And then, Drew, you have Caden Green from Missouri. So, again, if a student and fan of the University of Kansas ranks a player from the University of Missouri, there has to be something to his game, right?
Mm-hmm. My thoughts on Caden Green have really fluctuated throughout the year. So to start off the year against Central Arkansas in week one, first off, he was a left guard in 2023 and 2024. Played really well. He's a really good guard, but in the absence of Armand Membu and some tackles, Missouri moved him to left tackle this season. So this is his first year at left tackle, and that showed in week one. They faced Central Arkansas, and it was bad. Like he was a PFF game like a 50 run pass block grade. He gave up a sack against Central Arkansas, and I write for a KU site, a Kansas site, and I was doing a film review or a film preview for KU's Missouri's game in week two, and I highlighted him as a target, a weak point of their offense who the Jayhawks could target, and from that point on, he somehow improved dramatically, and was really good for the rest of the season. Gave up one sack and 5 pressures for the remaining time. He missed a couple games with injury, but he played really well. 88 pass block grade by PFF. Just to show the improvement. 50 in week one against Central Arkansas. Rest of the year averaged almost 90. So he's really improved a lot. I think he's going back to school. And even if he does go out, guards still might be suited best for him. But he's got good mobility, good power at the point of contact. The improvement is the main thing for me. He can anchor well, good pad level, good power, picks up some blitz as well, but just the improvement from the start of the year. He's not perfect by any means and still needs to improve a lot, but I do think he could be someone we could look at even next year as someone who could be worth some value for teams if he can continue this improvement, establish himself as a great tackle. But yeah, it's just a very interesting evaluation with him. He was probably a little bit outside of my 150, but I wanted the list to get to 10, so I just shoved him up a little bit and put him in there. But no, I like Caden Green. It's just been a wild year for him, but his stock's rising.
Cool. So he's not going to be as high as Zion Young, is what you're saying?
No, he's nowhere near as high as Zion Young for me. Zion Young's in a different tier. He'll probably be in the Ahmad Hardy tier next year. Talk about a stud.
Cool.
But
Well, we have been going for 65 minutes. Why don't we pause for some podcaster identification? Drew, do you want to let everybody know about your Saints podcast and the other things that you do?
Follow me on Twitter. My Twitter's at Jerome Collins, right there. I have a New Orleans Saints podcast called The Dome Discussions. I write for New Orleans Saints site as well at Who Dat Dish, write for the Kansas site, Kansas Sports, as I mentioned earlier. And yeah, I just started this Substack, so go follow that. It's linked to my Twitter.
Cool. Anthony.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Anthony_Russo97. My latest Substack post as well talked about the offensive tackles that we just talked about here. But if you want to read more of my NFL draft content, you can check out my Substack as well. And I'm posting NFL draft stuff, pretty much daily at this point. As I said, this is Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl are the talk of the town right now. Players are accepting invites, and obviously we've got the college football playoff too. So NFL draft season is very much heating up, and now is as good a time as any to subscribe to the Draft Professor podcast as well, where I will be here with Drew Saturday mornings and as well on Friday nights for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, so I want to thank both of you for helping out over the last, from September through December here. So Draft Professor just got done breaking down every position group where we were targeting the players that are going to be drafted in rounds 1 through 5. So players always slip through the cracks. We try our best, to do in-season scouting and know who we should be discussing on the podcast. But we're going to be here every day from now until the NFL draft, covering the draft. And we can't do it without Drew and Anthony showing up one time a week, or in the case of both of them, they actually each podcast twice a week. So this Saturday morning show will be at 10 a.m. Eastern, like I said, leading up all the way to the draft. So Give those two gentlemen a follow, please, and thank you. You can follow the channel here at NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. And you will be then notified of all the mock drafts we do. You'll be notified of daily draft content. You will see retweets of each of their Substacks and any of the other content that they make as well from the Draft Professor account. So for Drew, Anthony, myself, the 110 people of the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow morning.